The transit hall at Halvora 9 smelled like recycled coolant and old paperwork. Not the physical kind. The Halvora didn't use paper, but the bureaucratic kind, the kind that has weight and smell even when it's just light on a screen. The queue moved in increments. 4 meters. Stop. 2 meters. Stop. I'd been in it for an hour and 20 minutes, and I still had 11 bodies ahead of me. Crag shifted on my shoulder, rearranged his feet, and went back to watching the room. He does that. Watches. Not the way dogs watch, with their whole body leaning into the thing they're tracking. Crag watches the way old men at counters watch, still measuring with that particular quality of attention that makes you feel like the information is being filed somewhere permanent. He's 15 years old. His feathers are the color of a winter sky, and his tail is the red of a warning light. And he's been on my shoulder every day since I was 9 years old, and my grandmother put him there and said, "He'll find you more interesting than me." Ivet guten Boring. He found the Halvora logistics counter very interesting. The queue moved. I moved with it. The Halvora are efficient in the way that systems designed for the Halvora are efficient, which is to say not efficient at all for anyone else. They have 4 intake classifications for visiting personnel, and those classifications have subcodes, and those subcodes interact with transit origin points in ways that require secondary forms if you boarded at a non-compact hub, which I had, which meant I was going to be at the counter for a while. The officer who called me forward was named Veth Merrick. I know that because it was on his badge and because I read everything a habit Crag taught me by example. Merrick was blue-gray in the way that senior Halvora get, not the bright cyan of the younger officers, but something older, a little muted, a little certain of itself. He had the posture of a man who had processed 10,000 transits and found all of them unremarkable. He looked at my manifest. He looked at Crag. "Comfort item," he said. "Companion animal," I said. "African gray parrot. Earth native. 15 years old." Merrick made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. He tapped something into his screen. "Comfort item," he said again, like he was settling a debate I hadn't started. "Secondary intake form required for non-standard personal cargo. Non-compact origin, subcode 7. I said, "I have it." I produced it. He took it, glanced at it, and slid it back across the counter with 2 fingers, the way you'd slide a card to someone you'd already decided had lost the hand. The motion caught the edge of my coffee cup, the one I'd set on the counter's lip while I dug through my kit for the form, and the cup went off the edge and landed on the floor. It didn't break. The Halvora use hard floors. It just hit and rolled and came to rest against the base of the counter, empty, spinning slowly. I looked at it. I looked at Merrick. Merrick was already looking back at his screen. Crag hadn't moved. He was watching Merrick the way he watches things he's decided to understand. I crouched, picked up the cup, straightened up, and set it back on the counter. "I'll need that subcode form in triplicate," Merrick said. "Station policy. It says single copy on the station guide. Updated last rotation. Single copy is for compact origin transits. Non-compact requires triplicate." He still hadn't looked up. I took the form back. I found a flat surface on the side counter and started filling in the second copy. There were 7 fields. Some of them were the same field with different labels. I filled them all in. Krag watched Marek. Across the hall, there were 2 Tessurai observers. Large-scaled, the kind of bulk that makes you understand why the compact brought them along to transit hubs. Not customs exactly. Observers. They watch for things the Halvora classification system doesn't have codes for. One of them had been looking at a screen. The other had been watching the queue in that general, bored way of something that doesn't expect to be surprised. He wasn't watching the queue anymore. He was watching Crag. I noticed this the way you notice things when you've been moving through alien spaces long enough, sideways, without turning your head. The Tessurai observer had gone very still. Not the still of boredom. The still of something that has just identified a variable it doesn't have a category for. He took a half step back. I kept filling in the form. Merrick said something to his colleague at the next station. I didn't catch it, but I heard the word the Halvora use for animals kept for sentiment rather than function. It's a short word. It's not a kind word. His colleague looked at Crag and made a similar sound, and they went back to their screens. Crag made no sound at all. He blinked once, slowly, the way African greys do when they're relaxed and paying attention and have already decided something. I finished the third copy of the form. I slid all three across the counter. Merrick took them without looking up, stamped them, put one in a drawer, one in a tray, one in a different tray. Processing, he said. Estimated wait, 12 minutes. Secondary station will call your number. Understood, I said. I stepped to the side. I found a bench along the wall, sat down, set my kit between my feet, and watched the hall. Crag watched the hall. A minute passed. 2. The Tessurai observer who had gone still was still very still. He wasn't watching me. He was watching a point approximately 6 centimeters to the right of Marek's left ear, in the way you watch a thing you're hoping will remain where it is. Merrick left his station at the 6-minute mark. Not called away, just went through a door behind the counter, probably to the secondary filing room, where they send the non-compact subcode forms for manual review. Standard process. The door closed behind him. At the 9-minute mark, a junior officer came out of the same door, looked around the hall with the specific expression of someone who's just found something they didn't expect and has not yet decided how to report it, and went directly to the secondary station supervisor without stopping. Crag yawned. It was a complete yawn, beak wide, tongue up, the small, satisfied shake at the end that means he's been comfortable for a while and sees no reason to be otherwise. I watched the supervisor and the junior officer have a brief, quiet conversation. The supervisor went through the door, came back 90 seconds later, made a call on his internal line. My number was called from the secondary station 4 minutes after that. A different officer processed my transit. She did not look at Crag. She looked at a point somewhere over my left shoulder for the entire interaction, which took less time than any transit processing I have experienced at Halvor 9 before or since. She stamped my manifest, cleared my intake, handed everything back. "Enjoy your stay," she said, in the careful voice of someone reciting a script they are grateful for. "Thank you," I said. Crag was asleep before I reached the far side of the hall. His head was tucked, and his eyes were closed, and his weight on my shoulder was the familiar, specific weight of 15 years, and he made the small sound he makes when he's dreaming, which is no sound at all, just a faint adjustment of feathers. I never asked what was in the storage alcove behind the processing counter. I am given to understand that Veth Merrick took a medical rotation shortly after. A rest cure. Something about nerves. The exact details are in a report I was never sent and didn't request. The Tessurai observer who had gone still filed a single-line addendum to the station's intake classifications that same afternoon. I know this because the station guide was updated before I left, and I read everything. It said, in the Tessurai notation system, which I have since had translated, "Do not approach the gray bird. No elaboration. No subcode. No secondary form required." Crag opened one eye. When we boarded the outbound transport, checked that I was sitting down and not doing anything that required his attention, and went back to sleep. The Tessurai do not file addenda lightly. I've been told it takes 3 confirmed incidents and a formal review board before they'll update standing guidance at a transit hub. I've only been through Halvor 9 once. I've thought about that sometimes in the years since. The economy of it. 1 interaction, 12 minutes of queue, 1 knock coffee cup, and somewhere in the secondary filing room a logistics officer decided that the rest cure was a reasonable career pivot. Crag had not moved from my shoulder. He had not made a sound. He had done what he has always done, which is watch and wait and understand things and file the information somewhere permanent. My grandmother said he found me more interesting than her because she'd gotten boring. I think, probably, that she was the most interesting person he ever met. I think he just decided, at some point, that interesting wasn't the same as worth his time. He chose boring, and he chose me, and he has not reconsidered once in 15 years. The transport cleared the dock at Halvor 9 on schedule. Crag slept the whole way out.